Typhoon Nalgae, known in the Philippines as Typhoon Quiel, was a powerful tropical cyclone that struck the Philippines, and it affected Hainan, China as a weak tropical storm. Nalgae was the 8th typhoon and the 4th super typhoon in 2011. Forming as the 32nd tropical depression of the season, the system formed on September 26 over the Philippine Sea. On September 27, it was named Nalgae as it explosively intensified into a typhoon on the next day. Nalgae reached its peak intensity as a Category 4 typhoon on September 30 while it made landfall over Luzon. Nalgae weakened into a tropical storm as it entered the South China Sea on October 1. Nalgae made landfall over the island of Guangdong in China on October 4 as it weakened to a tropical depression. Nalgae dissipated on October 5 east of Vietnam. On September 26, the Japan Meteorological Agency, JMA, started to monitor a weak tropical depression that had developed about 1,260 kilometers, 700